Welcome to TMI Today with Rita and Jen Lee. In this podcast, there is no such thing as too much information. We are diving into all of the taboo topics, from money and careers to relationships and parenting, to whatever else we've been too afraid to discuss as women. Listen in and join the movement as we raise each other up in our everyday lives.
Welcome to another episode of TMI, Today's Motivational Insights, with Jen Lee, financial stress attorney extraordinaire, and Rita Bocuzzi, also known as Mama Rita, money expert, financial consultant, speaker extraordinaire.
Hey, all around great money manager.
We get to just have fun. And today we're going to be talking about I'm going to say it could be a heavy topic, but it's, this is what today's motivational insights is about. It's insights into like skill sets and awareness around financial issues. And today's topic is about financial abuse and, knowing some of the red flags and knowing what to do. So hopefully, as much as I love Jen Lee, that you'll never meet her.
Exactly. I never want anyone to need me. My ideal world would be some people never need me. They're educated and can be informed so they can make good decisions without me.
Right. Which is such a beautiful, again, this is coming from both of our hearts as a giving, because most of these topics are not talked about. And we're finding there's a few of us that do talk about it. And we know that those that do talk about it tend to accelerate and do better. And so we want everybody to flourish financially. So, so we'll start on with our topic. What are a few of the red flags, Jen?
And just as a foundation, financial abuse is often misunderstood because people are like, oh, he's not abusive to me or she's not abusive to me. And I often use he, but please know that I'm just being sometimes I'm just shortening things up. It can be either spouse. But financial abuse, the red flags of this, or what it looks like, is not having any access to bank accounts. So you don't know what's in the bank accounts. You don't know what the paycheck looks like for either one of you, really.
Wow.
If you have a job. So just no access to accounts. Like you don't have the ability to go to a store and buy something without getting permission to do so, is basically what no access is.
Wow.
And then no visibility into assets. So maybe you have access to one checking account because that's the account that you're allowed to buy groceries out of, but it only has enough in the account for you to buy groceries, and you have no idea where any of your other money, assets, real estate, you have no idea what your marriage has as far as assets go. So that's usually another huge red flag.
Yeah. I hear about that all, I hear about this. And it just touches my heart because all of us get to deserve to, I always say, whether you are the income person that brings the income to the household, but if you are in a household that is like one union, your worth is combined, right? Yep. So that this way you can flourish, you get to flourish, you get to live as an individual human being. That is our right. Right, to be able to survive and then thrive. And when someone, I'm trying to think of the state agency, and maybe you know it better than I do, but where the unclaimed funds are, right? And I remember doing an event and talking about this, that there's all this money there, and most of it is because, and I was speaking to a group of women, and really it is a big allowance of it is monies that spouses, I'll just say spouses in this case, did not disclose to their partners or wives or spouses, and they're there and they don't even know it. So the money actually belongs to them, and unless you know to claim it, it sits there, and it shouldn't be sitting there. You deserve it is kind of where I'm getting to the point. It's money that is yours.
Well, and Rita, I think you see this a lot too, where you'll have someone come in, oh, my husband manages the money. I don't have any idea. Or my honey manages my money. I think I've heard you say that before. Yes.
And so there's a couple issues with that that's really alarming. Is, I do get women, oh, I don't want to, and their husbands want them to, right? just like my dad wanted my mom to,
Yep.
because God forbid something happens to him. This is not about disagreements or anything.
Right.
This is truly about a loving act between the two of you, actually. You accepting the receiving of this information so that you can stand no matter what happens in your life. And that person, it's a giving and a receiving of this information around money. So when you look around this resource, really, if you can kind of take the word money out of it and even just say this resource of dollars, it almost changes it a little, because it's like, what is that going to work for or do? And in the event, like if your partner or spouse gets sick,
right,
and you don't know, I can't tell you how many times in my situation is we'll find out, even on Facebook, a client of mine, oh, my husband has cancer. And I'm like, wait, you set up a plan to receive money, and they forget because they're not managing it. And the person is too sick to think about it.
Right.
And it's like, that's when we pipe in, hopefully that we see it going, oh my gosh, here's this money for you. So that's kind of where in my world it works. And it's so important for each of you to know, because it's equal resource.
And that goes into some of Rita, you touch on it really quickly. There's one of the other red flags is disagreements about money. If you can't talk about money with your spouse or your significant other, that's a red flag, because it's a very emotional topic for people, but not even being able to talk about it without ending up in a huge fight is a red flag. It may not be financial abuse at that point, because a lot of people have disagreements about money, but if you can't even talk about it and know where funds are going.
One of my share little most favorite questions to ask people is, what's the number one reason for divorce? And without fail, the word money comes out of everybody's mouths. And it really isn't about the money. It's about the communication.
Exactly.
And many couples and partners, we haven't been taught how to communicate with one another. We just haven't. And so we're learning from each other's different backgrounds. We're coming with these different backgrounds and different understandings. And that's where discord can sometimes happen, or disagreements. And it's really just lack of different bases of learning. And when we get together, we get to compromise, especially over the resource that is meant to make you both thrive.
Exactly. Yeah. So a few other red flags, and I want to jump in the difference between financial abuse and communication issues, because that's really important to know whether it's really financial abuse versus communication. But if every single expense is questioned, you go to the grocery store, I've seen this really horrible situations where they'll question, why did you spend $5 on this? Or where I gave you $10 and you only brought back change for $8. Like that kind of questioning is not normal. And I think it often slides into that. So you don't realize it's happening while the reins are kind of tightening around you. And so I've seen that where clients will go, oh my gosh, it didn't start out like this, but it became so constricting along the way. And that's intentional. That's how abusers tend to operate, is in this cycle of they let you think everything is great, isolation, questioning, and then they have control of you. So that questioning every single expense is a really huge red flag that I see, and only giving you a very small allowance for certain things is in there too.
So, we're talking about the red flags. At what point should someone start questioning it, or start reaching out to help, because it's like, it's that forest for the trees, right?
Yeah.
So when do you start maybe even asking your friends, are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, because money is so hard to talk about, and that's the other problem too, but asking a friend is probably the first step I would take. Like, okay, is this normal? Does your husband do this too? Or, did your parents manage money like this? It's okay to ask. And everyone's always worried that their friends are going to look down on them for money problems. Your friend has money problems too. So they're not looking down on you. No one's thinking about you and your money problems. We're very, internally focused
about their own.
Exactly.
It's true. We all think that. That is
exactly
such a really important point.
And so just ask a really good friend that you trust, maybe a friend you've had a long time. I would start there. If your spouse is willing to go to therapy with you, and it's just a communication issue. If they say yes to therapy, that's usually a good sign, because that means they're willing to communicate and talk about it. If they mean, no, this is your problem, not my problem, then I would not go to therapy with them. But also, a therapist is a good one to talk through. So individual therapy is very good for financial abuse, because you get to run it by someone else from your perspective. So I recommend therapy for pretty much everyone. If you've ever met me, everyone needs therapy for
I'm going
something.
to say 100% amen. Yes to that one. We again, it's that outside person,
It is.
objective perspective.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to share probably a little bit, and it's not financial abuse. It was financial infidelity, and I had never
Yeah.
heard of that word
Mhm.
before. So can you explain a little bit, maybe the difference between
Yeah.
financial
Yeah.
infidelity and financial abuse?
So financial abuse is you don't have access to anything and you're being controlled pretty much by the lack of access. Financial infidelity is the keeping of secrets. And it can be a secret account. It can be credit card debt that you don't know about. It can be, I'll take care of the taxes and file them, and then either not filing them or not paying the taxes. And so financial infidelity is more of the cheating. That's what, like when you think of cheating on someone, you're cheating on them by not handling the finances in a way that the two of you would have handled them, but you're trying to keep a
And I think
secret.
this is good
So
awareness, not if just somebody else is doing that,
yeah.
that you might be doing that
Yeah, you
and not
never.
realizing it.
Yes. I see this a lot with credit card debt. Honestly, like people will get credit card debt, like get credit cards in their own name and have a bunch of debt, and then the other spouse doesn't know about it. Um, and it becomes the marriage's problem, because you don't, you need to pay for the credit card debt, and it
Right. And our
eventually it
actions
comes out.
affect all, whether
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
or bad, every
Yeah.
day to day. This is the one thing people think that they don't have an effect. You do.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing something or you're not, you do.
Yes. And financial infidelity can be solved through therapy as well. It's not an abusive. It's a lot of times it's unintentional.
Yeah.
And you're trying to protect them from something a lot of
So,
times.
and I'll share again, story very vulnerably,
Oh.
after having gotten financial cancer, vowed that it would never happen again. And I started, we had great credit, and I knew my husband. I had wanted to do courses earlier on.
Yep.
And so for me, it was like, okay, he's not going to let me do this because he wouldn't let me do it before. I don't want to screw up again.
Yeah.
So I want to learn so I could teach my kids. And I started, one course, and these courses aren't cheap. They're not cheap. It adds up to tens of thousands of dollars. If I can, I don't know if I'm turning red, but, and it gets a little hot under the gun when you're starting to do this. But I knew, and I don't recommend that for anybody. I just knew that I was going to turn that around and change it. It was it was a heavy commitment for me. And then not to do it just for my kids, but to do it for everybody else. So, but when you do those things, it puts a strain on a marriage. And I'll be honest, literally we almost separated because of that. We've been married 32 years now. I keep on counting an extra one. I like saying 33. And, we had to have some serious conversations around that, because it was not fair to him to not let him know, regardless of whether he was going to approve or not. And so, even though well-intended, but I didn't even know that there was such a thing as financial infidelity until we went to therapy and we had heard about it. So how do people get out? If they're in this scenario, how do they get out of it?
So you've talked to a friend, maybe you talked to a therapist, you realize that you're in this situation. And I will be very honest that I have seen the situation with a lot of very smart people. So it happens to a lot of people, whether you think about it or not. I've seen really high-powered attorneys actually in a situation where they're being financially abused. So to get out, the therapist is really important. Documenting what is going on. You journal, do something at the moment, write things down, like I didn't have access, I didn't have an account, or he used money against me, told me I had to do X in order to get money for the week. Write those things down so that you have, and it's hard, but journaling helps in a number of ways, but it also helps in documentation. Develop an escape plan. So the one hallmark of abuse is it tends to escalate. So if your spouse thinks you're starting to push back on things, it could lead to other abuse. Emotional abuse often goes along with financial abuse, and physical abuse is the one that everyone thinks of when they think of abuse.
Right.
So it can escalate. So having an escape plan, have all your documents together, if you have children, have your children's documents together so that you could actually escape out if you have to, at a moment's notice. And then the therapy and asking for help part. If you're in a situation where you're being financially abused, get legal advice, ask for help, because how a lot of abusers keep you under their thumb is by misinforming you of what will happen if you leave. They'll tell you, oh, I'll take the kids, you'll never get any money, you're going to be living on the street and homeless. They're trying to scare you into staying, because they know if you go talk to someone and ask for help, that person who's sees this all the time is going to tell them this isn't normal and you don't have to live like this. You have the right to, have a normal life. So they don't want you knowing that there are options. So asking for help is really important.
They're planning their escape plan.
Yeah.
Should they be talking to an attorney about that? Like, they may not want somebody to leak it to the other person.
Yeah.
Like, what's the best way for them to facilitate that?
I often recommend the hotline.org. So if you go to the hotline, they have a way on there where you can message with crisis counselors, and it hides, because if he's tracking your phone or if he's doing something, they have a way where it'll hide their website. And so a lot of times as a social worker, they'll connect you with local resources, a social worker, something like that can help you develop that escape plan. It's usually not a lawyer at that point with the escape plan. It's usually some type of social worker, counselor, that kind of thing.
That's great. And so, what if you do end up having to go to court? What is, what should you be aware of?
So the hard part about financial abuse is it's not readily apparent a lot of times. It's not one of those things where you have photographs of bruises or even recordings of something. Like sometimes emotional abuse can be captured with a recording. Financial abuse is a little more insidious. It kind of goes in. And a lot of the courts don't necessarily understand financial abuse. I've seen judges that don't quite get financial abuse because it can be hard to prove and hard to show. So that's why the documenting really comes into play, and having a good attorney who understands financial abuse is really important on the divorce side, because chances are your abuser is a personality type that everyone thinks very highly of in the community. They are well-spoken. They're going to get up and they're going to make you look crazy because they've literally driven you crazy. And now they're going to look like, look, he's crazy. And obviously they need mental help. So that's the game, is to make you look crazy. So the documenting, all the help you need, all the resources, gather those around you, use your people so that you have a good defense when he starts or she starts making you look crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so important.
Yeah.
And while it's such a heavy topic, this phrase for me is preparing versus panicking.
Yeah.
Right. Because the panicking, you may not be crazy, but when you are in a panic, to people, it might appear that you are, right? Yep. So you get to be prepared and not panic. And look at, you wouldn't have a career in the world if this didn't happen, right? If there's, not that you want it to be that way, but you're there to serve people. And this is the beauty, is that this service is available because people will be the way they will be and do what they will do. And you get to take care of you. You're your most important asset, right? And when we talk about money and wealth, gosh, you got to take care of you. You're the most important asset. And your wealth, your health is your wealth in these cases, your mental health, your physical health around financial abuse. And gosh, these were such amazing tips today, Jen. I feel like I'm even learning over and over again as I hear these things. So I just want to thank you so much for this beautiful service of really also clarifying, differences between different aspects of what we do and don't do, what one thing is and one thing is not. And this has been truly an empowering educational episode.
And
thank you.
Talking about it, thank you. And talking about it is what makes it be seen in the world. Like, people aren't going to recognize it unless you talk about it. And so that's why Rita and I
get past it. You get to get past it. That's the good thing, it's that it's that I call it, the acronym of fear that we most are starting to hear most often: face everything and rise.
Yep.
And the thing is, you don't have to do it alone. It does take a village. And I'm going to say, Jen and we're here to be part of your village of support and service to have you flourish. All right.
And that's TMI. Thanks, Rita.